My name is Alex Gakuru. I'm the director of the Center for Law in Information Technology in Kenya. I think this is a big step towards reclaiming our position in terms of filmmaking that is African-driven, African-owned, and tells the African story and is benefiting Africans. For far too long, we have been having the whole idea of audiovisual being driven by foreign narratives, foreign cultures, and foreign influences. And we become mere consumers of the content, but it doesn't benefit us because the releases are usually depicting other characters. And the bigger impact of this is on the effect on culture. Because when you are not projecting yourselves on the instruments of audiovisual and film, then it means you are progressively evolving and absorbing foreign or alien or outside or westernized cultures. So it does have a lot of impact beyond economic, socio-political. It does have culture, traditional value systems in the African sense, and how it dilutes them, improves them, and maybe makes life better or worse for Africans. So the impact will be multifaceted, and I think those are some of the aspects that I foresee it having a positive impact on Africa. The first benefit it has, it gives them a political, if you like, entry point, a sort of a policy framework under which to engage, and also legitimacy in terms of advocating for a local expression, interests and benefits, because absent that, they are always going to be looked at as they are loose, Juakali, people out there doing their own things, but then they are not recognized. So the first thing is the recognition. The second thing is that now having a framework developed further in terms of the functions of what the organization does, it gives legitimacy into calls for government investment, government support, and government waiver of taxes and other incentives to promote this as an industry. It's also an entry point to local politicians and political class into understanding about some of these soft products that can be produced and exported, and in turn, and in the process bring a lot of prosperity to the African people, beyond also fulfillment in life and people achieving a reflection of their identity and benefit. Can also stand to gain a lot of national interest. Look at Nollywood, look at Hollywood, look at other woods all over the world. It's not just Hollywood, and the Europeans also. So it's about time we seize that, and we also cease looking at ourselves as mere consumers of audiovisual, and yet we have got very rich cultural diversity which we can harness and utilize for the benefit of our society, and indeed the rest of the society in the world, as they get to know authentic African stories told by Africans, not told by foreign writers. One of the things it's going to do is to correct a certain narrative that has been set by the Western world, that when you're talking of Africa, it should be sadness, it should be sickness, it should be disease, it should be death, war, and tribal fights, and it should be, very stupid people on top of trees who are just there coming, waiting for the kind white man to come and rescue them. Because that's the story that has been said, and even in movies acted from Hollywood, the Africans are most of the times servants, working under the white people, but they don't tell the story of that person who was colonized, who was suffering, who had undergone a lot of trials and tribulations, because the lens from which is seen is from the producers, and their interest is to tell a different story. So the first thing it will do, by empowering people to tell their story, whatever it is, it changes that narrative that had been said by foreign authors who had already framed, and still that frame remains very hard. You'll be amazed, some people come up even with characters in novels and films, and then they are told their characters don't look authentically African. Why? Because they don't look to be sick. They look healthy. They are happy. They are jovial. They are healthy kids. They are not Africans. You should be sad. You should be suffering from HIV, AIDS, malaria, the disasters, civil wars, strife, and all those sort of problems. And guess what? When these messages are constantly repeated, they become normalized. So it's a kind of a brainwashing, soft brainwashing, and then this part of the effect that now will be progressively going to be wiped out. I think a very good way of demonstrating that is a past example that happened many, many years when I was much younger. It used to be called UTNA, a Union of African Radio, and its headquarters in Africa was in Nairobi. This is where African countries, the then sole broadcasters, used to exchange programs. So Kenya would send its programs to, let's say, Ghana. Ghana would send its own to Zimbabwe or other countries. Maybe they speak the same language and they'll be broadcast on their national channels. And this gave us, for example, Ugandans would know what is happening in Kenya and Tanzania. And we got to know each other as Africans from another part of Africa. You know, not now where we are conditioned to all watch the script set up by some Hollywood studio or some other studio in Europe, or some other one now in the soaps in Mexico, which now forces our youth to try and behave like the actors in those movies. So the first benefit is the fact that now as Africa we are going to have this understanding of who we are as a peoples, and this is first of all going to bring cohesion. Why are we talking of Africa free trade economics? You know, it's because we have realized we can't keep saying we are going to trade with other people whom we don't see, and they're only coming here to invest, to get returns, continuous permanent returns to their home countries. So even this whole idea of foreign direct investment is questionable. We should not be celebrating and rejoicing they are coming. We should think about their business people, they have other foreign interests. So we are going to think of how we have to trade with ourselves, how we have to have movies that depict ourselves. Africa, it's the untapped market as it's being seen out there because they exhausted everything out there. So I think this is the reason that an initiative like this, simple as it may be, is powerful, and it stands as an example of many other ways in which Africa could benefit by looking inwards amongst its own people and seeing the strength in the diversity, the wealth in the diversity of the people they have, and the goodness, the collective goodness in trading, in communicating, in sharing experiences within other Africans. I see the following. The moment you assert yourself and people recognize your strengths and you are there on the table, they say that if you are not on the table, if you are not at the table, you are on the table. Meaning, you go to find ways of making sure you are part of the discussants on an issue being discussed at the table. Else you are going to be what's on the table being fed. For far too long, Africa has been on the table, being feasted on, being exploited, being used, misused and abused. And now the moment Africa comes up as one block and say these are our interests, then you see things shifting. Then you see now other people saying, okay, now we need to collaborate. Of course we want to collaborate because even the greatest success of some of the biggest Western movies is because they have co-location, collaboration. They have several settings in different parts of the world. The movie acquires an international acclaim so that over and above Africa, we have markets where we can show our African content worldwide. So we are not anti-collaborating with the world, and we actually welcome it, but we have to do it when we are at the table, not on the table. So we are not the subject. We are equal participants and discussants and shareholders in the global conversation, in the global expression, in the global telling of the story of the world. Then they can tell us their stories, and because we have international understanding, but it cannot be skewed to our disadvantage forever and ever.